Hi, everyone. This is Sebastian Traeger, Managing Director at Reliability Center, and welcome back to another Reliability 4.0 episode. As always, we're on a mission to help make the world a more reliable place. And today, we are thrilled to be joined by our guest, Ali Elsalaymeh. Ali, thank you so much for joining us. Ali is the Associate Director of Maintenance Excellence at Bristol Myers Squibb. So, Ali, it's great to have you here. We would just love to hear a little bit more about, thanks. Tell us a little bit more about your role in your company.
I started working here in Phoenix, Arizona with the Bristol Myers Squibb 2 years ago exactly. It's a great company. I love working with the people I am with. I am Associate Director of Maintenance Excellence. I lead reliability engineering, process engineering, metrology, planning and scheduling, MRO storeroom, and we're staying busy. So
it sounds like you would be staying busy with all that. And let us know a little bit about your story. How did you get to become in your role at Bristol Myers Squibb? Like what's the journey that you've been on as a reliability engineer? And what's kind of like from the beginning to now in that journey?
I started out as a design engineer, and then I became project manager for years. Then I started working for a company that did the Toyota system, lean manufacturing. So I had to learn it, baptism by fire, doing it. And then I got a job. Because of that knowledge, I was hired into ArcelorMittal Steel to be a reliability professional.
Okay.
So I went there and I learned TPM from Japan Institute of TPM. And once we're done with that, they told us Aladdin Corporation came in and they were sold to EXP, which is a Canadian company. They came in and they certified us on RCM2 methodology.
Okay.
And MTA, which is maintenance task analysis. So I became full-blown reliability guy.
Okay.
So I worked a lot at ArcelorMittal, saved them a lot of money. And then I started getting hired in whatever position I got is based on my background, not in project management, but as a reliability professional. So we're wired correctly for reliability. It's something I enjoy. Been doing it for a while.
It's great. That's really, really great to hear about your background. We're going to ask you quite a few questions related to your professional background and your experiences. But before getting back into the professional, tell us a little bit about maybe your family or something you like to do outside of work, just so folks can get to know you a little bit more.
My family, I have a wife and 3 boys. They're all out of college. One is a software engineer, one is a business management degree, and one is an electrical engineer. And
okay.
So they're all working, so they're off my back. So that's a good thing.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Good. And what I like to do outside work, I like gardening because, my job has a lot of politics involved and stuff like that. So it's good to go back to nature, to the basics.
Yeah.
And that's how I relax. Yes.
Well, Ali, you were just mentioning you came from Chicago. You're now in Phoenix. So which climate is easier to garden in?
Here in Arizona, it's easier to garden in, but not a lot of stuff survives the heat.
So
it just burns
last
and curls up and all that. Yeah.
Last through July and then it just disappears?
Yes, it just cannot handle 110, 120 degrees.
It is brutal out there, isn't it, in the summer?
Yes.
So that's good. Well, great. Well, let's turn back to work. And you mentioned that, I like that comment that you saved ArcelorMittal a lot of money. So from a KPI perspective, what did you solve for in order to do that? Like, what were your goals? And then tactically, how did you bring that about?
The KPIs is what, like they say, if you can't improve. So my best KPI is that I use a ton of KPIs, and you don't want to go overboard normally in industry. They say rule of thumb about 12 maximum, otherwise you're just going crazy. And so My favorite, you get MTBF, that gives you the health of your equipment.
Okay.
MTTR gives you the health of your maintenance. Availability tells you how good you are, how long can you run, can you meet what you plan to running. OEE, which is the ultimate KPI in my book, but I found out that people abuse it. When I go to a plant, when I was my previous job, I was the corporate reliability engineer, and we go all over the world. And I ask him what KPIs you use, and they mention OEE, and I say, what is your OEE? And they say 98%. I say, you're full of crap. Because worthy class is like 77%. I've heard some companies can go up to 85%.
Okay.
But 98%, I tell them you're beyond good. I should not have even came to your plant because you're so good. So you have to be careful with that.
Yeah. Why do you think it's abused? I mean, maybe just for folks who don't know, why don't you just explain in simple terms why that's such a good metric and then why it can be abused?
Well, because if you talk about OEE, you're talking about your performance, you're talking about quality rates, you're talking about the equipment availability. And if you're at 90% with each one of them, multiply that together, well, 90% is world class. So if you multiply it together, you get 77%. When you tell me 98%, that you don't make mistakes, everything is perfect, humming, which not possible.
Right.
So I say, why do you fudge these numbers? Well, because when we tell them we're at 68%, doesn't look good. So they spice it up a little bit, and that's not good. So for that company that told me they were 98%, I said, show me the data. So we recalculated it, and they were at 46%.
Oh, wow.
So,
and you think in that case they had the data, they just weren't calculating it right, or do you think they kind of fudged the data and therefore?
But it's not mystery, to have your quality rate, your performance rate, and your availability rate, multiply all three. And I'm talking with engineers, so they know their stuff. But when they give me 98% right away, I know something fishy.
Right. That makes sense. So that's good. So that's kind of the ultimate metric. And so then looking back, either at your current work or at previous ArcelorMittal, which of those levers did you affect the most to bring about cost savings and say uptime? Like what were the levers that you pulled to bring about results?
Mostly when I worked for Abbott Labs, which is the company that I came from, to Bristol Myers, which is another great company. I used to go around the world and help different plants, increase their production, cut down their downtime and all that stuff. So specifically went to Costa Rica. They have a plant in Costa Rica. They do, the wires that go, heart, stents and stuff like that, the guide wires and all that stuff. They had a lot of downtime. They had problems. It's costing them a lot of money. So they send me there to help them out. And when I do stuff like that, I do focus improvement group. So focus improvement group, I get engineering, maintenance, production people, and we go focus on these machines. The first thing I ask them, do you have a daily checklist? They say no. I said, well, let's create one. And this basically, you go around, you look for loose bolts, missing bolts, contamination, vibration, anything that visible to your eyes. And so you write this list, and every morning the operator, when they start, they take this list, they walk around. So when you first create it, it takes like 20 minutes to do everything. When you first create it, you're going to catch a lot of stuff, and then you get less and less and less, but you're in good shape. So I promise them that if they follow my directions and we do MTA analysis on their laser welder, I promise them that we cut down time by 10%. For that particular plant, I promised them 10%. By the end of the year, it was 75% reduction in downtime, $7.5 million.
Wow.
So that's just one example.
That's incredible.
I've done a ton of those. And you take it for granted, basic stuff like a screw missing or a screw loose. If you let it go, that's going to create a bigger issue. So if you nip every problem as soon as it comes into being at its incipient point, then you avoid a lot of troubles later on.
It's good. So in that example, obviously, I don't want to at all discount or discredit your contributions in any way, but what do you think you brought that they just weren't seeing? Like, why weren't they seeing because that's a huge amount of savings. What was it that they just were missing that yeah, you would maybe encourage others to pay attention to?
Well, people like firefighting because it makes you like a hero. You come in on a white horse and you save the day, And sometimes it's good to find a third person, somebody that does not see this every day, and to tell you, this is not right, this is okay, this is, and what for me being around for a long time, you kind of develop an eye for stuff, and it's like being there, done that before.
Right.
And when you're wired correctly for these kind of stuff, and you have passion for it and you love it, you walk in and you say, you can't do that. No, this is wrong. For example, air leaks, you worry about the ones that you don't hear. So I said, do you have ultrasound machine? Yeah, I do have it. Let's bring it in. Let's just go for 10 minutes. And we go around and we see all these directional valves and poly lines and all that stuff that's not pushed in all the way, stuff like that. That's simple and basic. I kind of like bring awareness to them, but we document that so they could do it, so everybody can do it the right way.
Got it. That's great. You mentioned experience. So thinking about your experience and thinking about a lot of folks that we talk to, I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast have to make a business case in order to introduce either a new technology or a new process into where they might say, it seems so obvious we need this. I switched companies. At our last company, we did this. I'd like to bring it to this new one, or whatever the case. What are your kind of either your tips or your advice for building a business case to be able to introduce a new technology or new process that you think would help the business?
You got to sell them on it. You got to look at, like, for example, you go in and you see, you work in the food industry, which I worked for General Mills for a long time. They have a lot of machinery that use lubricants. And those lubricants, can we switch them, for example, to food grade lubricants? So if you spill something on the food, that doesn't mean you don't reject it, but you didn't contaminate everything like you do with regular lubricants. So, for example, at the plant I am in, predictive maintenance, they lack. So we have leaks. We say we're short on air. We don't have enough air coming out of the compressors. Well, did we fix the leaks? Well, I don't know. I did that in a previous company where they're designed to run on 2 compressors. They have 4 compressors, but they weren't running all 4 compressors. So if you're designed for 2 and you're running 4, you're wasting money. You're just taking money and throwing it outside the window, because they say the most expensive utility is air. So I said, well, let's invest in an ultrasound machine. Let's train people on how to use this ultrasound machine. Let's show them numbers, get your higher ups to buy in. If the plant manager does not buy into it, you should not even start it, because it's going to fail, basically. So you have to sell it to them, show them some wins. You have to create your credibility that they can come to you and trust you. And after that, you could invest some money and buy that machine for $15,000. And you have to show them wins right away. Because for those particular compressors I'm talking about, when we check the cost, they would cost the company $315,000 every year. Wow. So if we bring them back to only 2 compressors, right away we save them over $600,000. Plus the downtime, plus the aches and all that kind of stuff that can happen. Yeah, so it's not easy to sell it, but you have to bring them numbers. You have to show facts. You gotta show them some wins to
It's good.
become on your side.
Well, and it sounds like one thing you do is you try to introduce something on a small scale, get some wins, and then sort of ramp it up. So kind of
Absolutely.
start with like, hey, here's what we think we can do. Now let's try to prove it out on a small scale, and not try to get the whole thing all at once, but win it out over time. That's great.
Absolutely.
So our company, is in the root cause analysis business. So of course, I have to ask you, how important are RCAs in your process? And, how frequently do you do them? What are wins that you get from those?
Absolutely. I mean, you have to have it. You have to. I mean, RCA is one of the most important ones. Normally, what we do is we have deviations because it's pharmaceutical, where everything is stringent. So if we're doing something and we made a mistake, that's a deviation. So we have to do investigation. And most of the time, most of those deviations, require root cause analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that we do the fishbone root cause analysis. Myself, coming from TPM background, I like the why, which is the cause and effect kind of thing,
Right.
So you get the simple why, and you get the more involved why. I like why because I don't need to sit and get a team. And so what I do, like I work with maintenance. If I have problem, if we had failure or an issue, I could have a scrap piece of paper and say, okay, we have this failure. Why?
Mm-hmm.
So once we get to root cause, say, what can we do? Put the countermeasure so this does not come back again. Otherwise, you just put in Band-Aid on the situation and it comes back, Something more involved, I go into like MTA, which is analyze the whole equipment. But you worry if you have one gearbox and it's been installed for 15 years and now it's sweating around the seals, it's probably aged. Take it out, replace it. But now if 2 months from now, a month from now, we start seeing leaks around there, maybe it's not the age now, something going on. Did we install it wrong? What's going on? Was the person that installed it was trained on doing the job? That kind of stuff.
Right.
So, yeah.
Let me ask you this question on root cause analysis. Can you remember a real win from doing an RCA in your past? Like we did one, we didn't know what it was going to be. We found the solution and it either saved us money or time, or like it surprised us by how effective that solution was.
Yeah, when I worked for the food industry, we had, a ton of conveyor belts that go around. We had right-hand gearbox, and we kept breaking that gearbox. And they kept saying, well, the belt was too tight on the sprockets. So that failure kept occurring. I said, well, let's do root cause analysis. So we sat with maintenance people that install it normally. And by the way, I'm not afraid to say this, but the more experienced the technician is, the worse it is to get to root cause. Yeah. Because that's the way they did it for the last 40 years. Yeah. They're not going to tell how to do it. Yeah. So once we start analyzing, we found out that the set screws that they put on it to hold it, to put the collar on and all that stuff, was not really to the proper torque to keep it in. So what happens every time is those set screws with the vibration, they back out a little bit, and now you have looseness, and it keeps sobbing until you destroy the bearing, and the problem happens. So we found out that after analyzing it, after arguing with maintenance, that we were not torquing those set screws properly. So that's one example that comes.
That's great. Great example. Thank you for sharing that. Well, Ali, it's been great speaking with you. Before we wrap up, I would just love to hear, kind of as you think about some folks watching this are just starting out in their careers, what is maybe one piece of advice you would give them, kind of sitting where you are now, looking back at the beginning, a piece of advice you might give someone starting out?
Well, when you approach anything, don't panic, don't complicate things, don't overdo the paperwork and get involved too deep into it. There is an answer for every question. There is a solution for every problem. Yes, you have to come down and do it. Communication is very important for any young engineers. Don't be too proud that I'm an engineer. No, You're just a human like everybody else, and sometimes they know more than you do.
It's
So
good.
so you gotta be with them, and you have to gain credibility. That's the most important thing. That's when they start believing you, and they start inviting you and asking you for your opinion. If you're arrogant, forget it.
That's a good word. I think anytime someone encourages us to be more humble and less arrogant, that's great advice that I think kind of serves us in anything, marriage, work, whatever, right?
Exactly.
It's always good advice. Well, our guest today has been Ali Elsalaymeh. Thank you, Ali, so much for joining us today. He's, again, the Associate Director of Maintenance Excellence at Bristol Myers Squibb, and we're so thankful that you were able to join us today. And to all listeners out there, again, this podcast is really about helping engineers and really anyone take steps to being more successful at what they do. If you happen to be looking for root cause analysis training or resources or materials, please check out reliability.com. If you're looking for software to go deeper, check out easyrca.com. But in general, we want to host these conversations and bring them to you so that you can learn. And together, I think, as Ali said, we can just be humble, keep asking good questions, and recognize there's still a lot more to learn. So that's all we have today, folks. Let's go forth and make the world a more reliable place. We'll see you on the next episode. Take care.